Well, I appreciate you being with us today on the Transplant Helper podcast / YouTube video series. My name is Jim Merle, and today we're going to be discussing very briefly one tip that I received many years ago as to how I was going to be able to best survive transplant. I've had a very, very successful recovery. I mentioned before on this particular podcast and video series, the doctors have told me time and time again that I probably had one of the better recoveries they have seen in 25 years, and I attribute some of that to this one tip I'm going to give you today, which is very simply stated that prior to transplant or pre-transplant, I kept my legs under me. Now, I had the opportunity, and if you can call it that, I went through the transplant evaluation process a total of 4 times. Now, the transplant evaluation process, which we're going to discuss here on another episode, is basically the process where you go through a tremendous amount of testing and quite a bit of training. And that training primarily has to do with learning about your new diet that you're going to have post-transplant, as well as learning about your new exercise program. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be hitting the gym every day or anything, but particularly if you're a heart or lung transplant patient, they're going to require of you that you do a little bit more walking and exercise than maybe you're used to in your life. But as they were sitting down talking to me about those things, I remember sitting down with a man who was in charge of the rehab program in this particular facility, UAB Hospital, and he sat down with me and was telling me about the survival rates and how well patients did versus those who didn't do so well. And he told me about a 70-year-old man that they had once transplanted there at UAB Hospital, and how that he thought that this man to that point had done better than anyone else. And he said the key to this man doing so good is because he had, quote, kept his legs under him. Now, he went on to tell me about this man and said that prior to needing a transplant, this particular man, 70 years old, mind you, had been formerly a long-distance runner. He had been a marathon runner, and he described him as having huge legs. He said this man's calves were just massive. He looked like a bodybuilder on his calves and his legs. He said he was just strong, just extremely strong. But he said in the last few months prior to transplant that this man had been basically bedridden. But he said every day or so when I would go in to check on him just to make sure that he was maintaining himself, to make sure that he was in the best condition he could be, he said I would find this man lying in the bed and he would be exercising his legs to the best that he could. He said oftentimes he would take his feet and push them down as if he were pushing a gas pedal on a car. He said at times I would even find him there in the bed and he would take and slide his body down in the bed, put his feet up against the footboard, and then push off as if he were lifting his body up and down out of the bed like he was doing squats. And he said, I remember talking to that older gentleman about that and asking him, what are you doing? Why are you trying to do this? You know, you're waiting on a transplant. You can't really exercise. You can't really get out of the bed. You can't walk. You can't go to the gym. You certainly can't run like you used to. Why are you doing this? And he said it was that gentleman who said to him, I'm keeping my legs under me. He said, I didn't understand what he meant until he had his transplant. He said he went into about a 12-hour heart transplant surgery. He came back into the CICU shortly after and said when the nurses came in and asked him, and the rehab people came in and asked him if he would like to walk, he said this man swung his legs around, stood up out of the bed, and took off walking down the hall. Tubes and IV lines and machines and everything attached. This man walked right down the hall as if nothing had happened. You say, well, how could he do that? Key to that was he kept his legs under him. The idea there is that because of the way the surgeries work, and it doesn't matter if it's heart, lung, liver, kidney, pancreas, whatever it is, the key to you doing well after transplant sometimes hangs in the balance over how quickly you can rebound from that surgery. Now, no doubt, I've been through it myself with a heart transplant. The pain is intense. The pain of having your chest cracked open, of having all that done, the recovery is difficult. But being able to get out of that bed quickly makes a tremendous and a huge difference in your recovery. And so I kept that in mind. And I can remember after my transplant how I tried to do the same thing. Within 24 hours, I likewise did the same thing. They came in and said, would you like to get out of the bed? I said, yes. Would you like to walk? I said, yes. Was it hard? Yes. Was it something I really wanted to do? No, but I knew that was going to be the key to my recovery. Now, like this man, I was a little bit more blessed, however. I was able to walk pre-transplant. I was out walking laps prior to my transplant. As a matter of fact, I could remember the night before, the early morning hours before my surgery began on the next morning, I was out literally walking the halls around my unit. To the extent one of my transplant doctors came by and said, Jim, you don't have to walk anymore. You're going to have a heart transplant in the next so many hours. You don't have to walk anymore. You're done with this heart. I said, no. I'm trying to keep my legs under me. You see, if you're not able to keep your legs under you, it's going to be very, very difficult to get out of the bed. It doesn't matter how healthy of an organ you receive, whether it be a heart, lungs, whatever. It doesn't matter how good that organ is. If the muscles in your body have become emaciated or weakened to the point that they cannot function, you're not going to be able to recover. So if you're bedridden prior to transplant for whatever reason, just do what you can. Eat right and exercise. If that exercise means you sit in the bed and twiddle your thumbs, or you move your feet up and down, or you push up and down the bed as this gentleman did, do it. Keep your legs under you. Do all that you can to survive. This has been my basically a tip of the day, if you will, and I thank you for joining us on the Transplant Helper. If you'd like to meet with me on Twitter, you can do that. You'll find me at transplant_help. You can also subscribe to this channel. That would be a huge help to me and anyone else. That would help us to be able to share these videos better, and those who are facing transplant or recovering from transplant could benefit. And I'm on Facebook. Just look around for Jim Murrell. That's JIMMURRELL. If you'd like to get some advice via telephone, I welcome phone calls at 256-773-1639. Thank you and have a wonderful day.